Welcome back, Magic fam. This is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and I'm back with another wonderful banned modern card tier list for all of you. That's right, we're going over the blue cards today. Blue gets a bad rap for being the most powerful color in Magic. But can you blame anyone? They got practically the fucking power 9 in this list. The cards in this list are so powerful, they're banned across formats and even restricted in Vintage. Remember, I rank these cards based on how much I think they deserve to be banned, all the way to, is there some room between they should be banned, maybe not, to they definitely should be unbanned. But before we get into that, I am a YouTuber. I've got a sponsor, FusionGamingOnline.com, my favorite local game store where I buy all my Magic cards, deck boxes, sleeves, and more. If you want to support the channel, you can use my coupon code Nikachu at checkout and save yourself 5% off all your purchases. Let's start this party off by going back in time, dig through time. My God, I remember this card because it was the start of an era. Perhaps Fire Design before Fire Design became invented. Wizards of the Coast openly said in an article they're no longer playtesting Modern, they're no longer playtesting Legacy. Why would they? They can't predict what the hell that metagame looks like 2 to 3 years down the road, especially with all the developments of the new cards. They're not putting their forces there. Their new design philosophy, let's make whatever we want for standard, and if it blows up anywhere else, they're just gonna ban it. It's like Fire Design minus any playtesting whatsoever. This business decision reminds me so much of Action Park, the most dangerous theme park on the face of the earth. I mean, the slides for these things were nuts. I mean, they were engineered to whip you all over the place, and very often people got injured. What ended up happening at Action Park? It got banned. It had to close down. No more Action Park, no more action. And Wizards R&D is like, well, you know what? If this card hurts anyone, you just ban it. All right, Dig Through Time is an interesting card. I mean, it's basically 2 mana, dig 7 cards deep, and you take 2 whatever you want and put it into your hand. Here's the thing, though. It barely saw any play in Modern, honestly, given the fact that it was completely overshadowed by Treasure Cruise, a card that we'll get to. Basically, there was these blue-red Delver decks playing a lot with Treasure Cruise, and the power of Treasure Cruise was so damn high that when they decided to ban the card, they ended up banning Dig Through Time with it. Easily, though, it proved its point in Legacy. It proved its point in Vintage. This is a supremely powerful card. I wouldn't say it's the most overwhelming card in the world, but it's so much value at so little cost. Really good in combo decks that this is very easily a ban. Moving on, let's actually just go directly to Treasure Cruise. Treasure Cruise, now that was an interesting one. I mean, this is fucking Ancestral Recall in the modern age. People are like, what? Really? They printed this in a set with fetch lands? What's going on here? And the debut for this was hilarious. The first Legacy event that could feature Treasure Cruise, only like 1 Delver player was bold enough to play it. And this player crushed everyone. You would get into the mirror match. The mirror match wasn't even remotely fair. One person is playing Ponder and Brainstorm, and the other person is drawing 3 cards. This had a very big impact also on Modern. Metagame was like 30% Blue-Red Delver, and I'll tell you why, because most of the deck was commons. I mean, you had your Delver of Secrets, your Young Pyromancers, your Treasure Cruises, your Serum Visions. I mean, the deck really wasn't all that expensive. Lightning Bolt, Remet, it's all commons for the most part. Your most expensive piece was basically Scalding Tarn, maybe some Snapcaster Mages if you wanted to go in that direction. But it was Treasure Cruise that put it way over the top. I mean, you just like blow away your hand, and then all of a sudden you just draw 3 and you're just back in business. But the deck wasn't just cheap. It was overwhelmingly powerful. It's really good. It ended up putting up a ton of results, gave Birthing Pod a huge run for its money. Basically, it took the pod community something like 2 months to figure out, well, what are we even going to do against this thing? Because prior to that, they were just getting tempoed out and actually outvalued. But it wasn't just Delver playing this card. Burn was splashing blue for it. How about that? Burn uses up all their burn spells up on you. Oh, and then they just draw a nice clean 3 cards after that. Ancestral Recall had been printed into Modern, and it had to be banned. This card was a very easy ban. I mean, you can't have Ancestral Recall floating around the format. Moving on, Gitaxian Probe. This is an interesting card because it took too long for the community to admit that looking at your opponent's hand for 0 mana was too good. It didn't help that many pros at the time, maybe even for years, considered Gitaxian Probe training wheels. You're playing Gitaxian Probe? That's training wheels. If you're good enough, you should already know what's in your opponent's hand. You should be able to read their soul. I hated this card because this card way less of the time was being used to look at your opponent's hand for information. Way more of the time it was being abused in some combo deck like Storm or Jeskai Ascendancy. Basically, for 0 mana, you would be able to get some trigger off of some other spell and draw a lot of value off of it. Not to mention, I mean, it was also very useful in Death Shadow decks way back in the day. Look at your opponent's hand, lose some life, get a Death Shadow on the battlefield, get that information. But let's not make no mistake, it was great in combo decks also for that information. When you're a combo deck, when you're ready to go off, it's nice to know that the coast is clear. Definitely give a huge boost to Infect decks. I mean, Infect was winning in the winners metagame somewhere between around 7% at the time that Gitaxian Probe got banned, and then Infect collapsed down to like 2% following the banning of Gitaxian Probe. Never really recovered after that. That just shows how much value knowing your opponent's hand is in advance of making attacks. And I guess over time, as decks got more refined, things like Infect, Death Shadow, Storm, Jeskai Ascendancy, other combo decks, they realized that, oh my god, like, they can kill on turn 3 somewhat regularly, and you know what? The times that you do not have an answer, they're just going to go for it. So it was finally time to say goodbye to Gitaxian Probe. This is an all-star that has been banned in almost every single format in Magic, from Pauper, Modern, Legacy, and it most definitely deserves its spot on the ban list. Magic, to some extent, is supposed to be a game of poker, and Gitaxian Probe is a way of ghosting all of your opponents when they're not even streaming. All right, let's talk about Mental Misstep. This, in theory, this card looks genius. Oh my god, the formats, they're getting faster, all these 1-drops. What can we do to combat things like Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt, Ponder, all the 1-drops? Aha! We're going to invent Gitaxian Probe, the ultimate counter spell that deal with all the 1-mana nonsense, counter those Deathrite Shamans, Mana Dorks, Inquisition of Kozilek, Thoughtseize. But there's a problem! Everyone will play this fucking card, and it will be a mental misstep war. Okay, Thoughtseize, mental misstep, your mental misstep. No. Mental misstep, your mental misstep. 4X in every single deck. That's not like deck diversity whatsoever. So they basically had to ban it. This is a card that should have been never printed in the first place. Let's not forget this is a Phyrexian mana spell. Phyrexian mana is bullshit. Cheating on mana, of course, is like the bane of Magic's existence. Look at the cards that we've already gone over. Mental Misstep, Gitaxian Probe, Treasure Cruise, Dig Through Time. If we cast all these spells, I would have spent 3 whole mana, and I would have been able to counter a 1-drop, draw a card, and look at my opponent's hand, draw 3 more cards, and also dig 7 deep and put 2 cards in my hand. Economics would teach us that there's no such thing as a free lunch. Those economists have never heard of Phyrexian mana. Next up, the king of being a bitch, Oko, Thief of Crowns. Now, to be fair, Oko, Thief of Crowns wasn't even properly evaluated upon spoiler season by the community. A lot of people hated the fact that it was a 3-mana planeswalker, but no one actually thought it was going to genuinely overpower the format. I know I saw the potential in Oko Thief of Crowns, what it could do on offense and on defense, and the flexibility of the +1 and turning any artifact or creature into an elk. But it was badly downplayed by most pros up until the point that people are actually playing with the card. Surprisingly, putting a 3/3 elk into play on defense once every second turn is basically more than enough to completely overpower your opponent. Another person who was on this card before even it was getting printed was Sam Black. Just said, hey, this could be the most powerful planeswalker ever, and dead right. For 3 mana, you basically had like almost an infinite amount of life gain. You went up to 6 loyalty, so generally things could never kill it. Elking things was good on offense and defense because basically your mana can't scale at all. If you spend 6, 7, 8, 9 mana on a creature, it just turns into a 3/3 elk, and it's going to be on par with my food tokens that I'm generating and also turning into elks. Randomly, you can exchange your garbage artifacts or creatures for your opponent's better creatures. Just a reminder, any deck that could splash green in a blue deck played this card. Any green deck that could splash blue also played this card. We saw it in Infect. But basically, it was dominantly a blue card. I look at Oko like a blue card. Dominantly, this saw play in Urza decks and control decks. So that's why I consider it a blue Planeswalker. It got snap banned in Standard, emergency banned in Standard, in fact. There was some vintage championship where someone elked their Black Lotus, got in the red zone for 3 damage for victory. That's how good Oko Thief of Crowns is hands down the best Planeswalker. Now, step aside, Jace the Mind Sculptor. Your crown for being number 1 has been stolen by the thief of all crowns, Oko Thief of Crowns. Now, Oko was beatable. I mean, if you give it your all, you throw everything at that Oko, dump your hand, exhaust your resources, you can kill that thing. You see, Oko was like Agent Smith. Yeah, Neo, if he gave it his all, he put in his best effort, he could beat that agent, he could get him. But when Agent Smith comes back, he doesn't have enough resources or strength. And that's really the problem with Oko. Once they play the second replacement Oko, you're like, okay, fuck it, I gotta get out of here. Oko easily is the best Planeswalker ever, one of the most broken cards ever created by R&D. And I think this was like a sort of a mistake. Well, of course it was a mistake. That's what happens when all the good abilities are plus abilities. All right, let's talk about the cantrips. Let's start off with Ponder. I think these are very interesting, controversial cards because, in my opinion, we already have a lot of cantrips. We have, like, really good card filtering. So I don't really see the real reason to have these cards on the banned list. Ponder, look at the top 3 cards, rearrange the order all you want, then either shuffle your library or not, and then just draw a card. The thing with Ponder is these cards were banned because of Storm. I mean, that's it. The Storm. Storm was pretty damn strong way back in the day. Not a lot of answers to it. They basically, they decided, okay, let's just axe all the good Storm cards. Let's take away the cantrips, the rituals, and hopefully that's going to be fine. And even then, the Storm deck was still pretty good, was being piloted to really good success among the likes of people like John Finkel. Even Steve still sees really good success today. But the difference is we have like way more hate cards for the Storm deck now than we ever had before in the history of modern Magic. I don't really see the relevance to them being on the ban list. I am not anti-cantrip, all right? A lot of people are like, Ancient Stirring should be on the ban list. I'm not one of those people. I actually think that there's a huge opportunity cost in Modern, spending 1 mana to even dig 3 cards deep, 4 cards deep, 5 cards deep. Your mana on every turn of the game really matters, and I think there is a opportunity cost to spending 1 mana on this cantrip, say on turn 2, when you could be playing a 2-drop or a 2-drop spell or a creature. It changes how you're going to play the game if you want to be playing with your cantrips. Yeah, it's better than all the other cantrips. It definitely will replace it. Strict upgrade. I know the debate is super hot, and that's why I'm going to put in the debatable section. I think we can unban this thing. It would help blue control decks. It would help blue combo decks. They would all improve. I don't think it's ban worthy. Modern is so hostile that you have to be doing something on every single turn of the game, and filling your deck up with like more powerful spells is more important than using your mana on cantrips. But that's a great discussion point. Do you think that Ponder should still be banned, or do you think it could come off the banned list? Let me know why in the comments section below. And now we move on with the baby brother of Ponder. We got Preordain. Scry 2 and draw a card. Seriously? Seriously? I mean, get the hell off the ban list. This card is an embarrassment. I don't think this card would even replace Opt in any of the decks that want to play Opt. Sure, it's better than Seaman Visions, but not by much. If Ponder is a debatable cantrip, I think Preordain is a clear unban. And now lastly, the newcomer to the banned list, Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. The card that really didn't have a place in Modern for a few months. Everyone's like, whoa, my god, that card is busted. You can you draw a card and you gain 3 life. You put a land drop on the battlefield and you can do it all over again. It happens every single time it attacks or enters the battlefield. What is going on here? But then people are like playing these rubbish decks with like trying to fill up their graveyard, self-mill themselves. It didn't work. And then some genius decided, well, do you know what? Oko was pretty good in a blue-white deck, just splashing green. Let's just do that all over again. But instead of Oko, Thief of Crowns, let's play Uro. Worked perfectly. And then created so many like variations of Simic control decks like Sultai Uro, Temur Uro. Then there was the 4-color Omnath version. Uro started to act like he owned the place. Let's do a checklist of everything that Uro could do. It could compete with Tron and Primeval Titan decks because it allowed control players to ramp up to a point where they had just as much mana or more mana than those decks to be able to play their counterspells, their cryptic commands, and be able to compete at the same mana resource as their opponents. It also, I mean, gave them a lot of life gains. The card advantage was insane. You play the thing, you draw a card. You escape it, you draw a card. You kill it, you escape it again, you draw a card. I mean, any deck that's trying to win with 1-for-1 removal, that's not going to work here. You're just going to get completely crushed and trounced under this thing. And that's why, while Uro was in the metagame and in all variations of control decks, your only competitors are basically decks that are super fast trying to get underneath you, or combo decks that just basically scale their win condition when they combo off. Modern is like a baby, and Uro a soiled diaper, and the baby was crying, and Wizards R&D was neglecting their baby. And you look at the Modern community, you look how fucking needy people are on Twitter and on Reddit. I mean, those are the sort of issues your baby is going to grow up with if you don't deal with the dirty diaper. It was a bit hard for me to figure out exactly where does Uro belong, because Uro was in the format for a very long time, didn't completely turn it completely on its head, but I decided that Uro actually is super broken, and one reason that Uro piles should have been probably like 50% of the metagame, but it was artificially diverse because the Uro decks were so ridiculously expensive. You could barely rent the deck with the rental services, and there was always the fear that if you bought into the deck, maybe Uro gets banned, and now it's banned. If you love these tier videos, don't forget to give a thumbs up, lets me know I should make more, and if you don't subscribe, Uro is getting unbanned.